On behalf of the Global Commission on Drug Policy, I would like to thank and congratulate Harm Reduction International for providing this forum to share the latest research and reflections on drug use, harm reduction, and human rights. Over the past few days, valuable insights have been shared and seeds of change sown, so that tomorrow the fruits of justice may be born. As individuals, as communities, and as a global movement, we all have the power to come together and move beyond the punitive paradigm of drug policy. In its place, we must build a new approach grounded in human rights, public health, compassion, empathy, and dignity. This work must continue. Colombia has suffered like no other country the war on drugs, which has its origins in the United Nations Convention on Narcotic Drugs, signed in 1961, and which became a war with the attack at all levels decreed by the then President of the United States in 1971. It's no secret that drug trafficking has been the main source of financing of the violence that has hit our country so hard. At the same time, Colombia has been the country that has accumulated the most experience in the fight against this problem. Through suffering and effort, we have learned to fight all the links of this evil chain. As long as there is consumption and prohibition, there will be mafias that profit from illicit revenues. This accumulated experience has taught us many lessons. One of them is that no country on its own can be successful in the fight against a very lucrative and multinational business. This is why, when I took office, one of my first actions was to call on the whole world to study together strategies different from those based exclusively on repression, which had been applied and which did not show positive results. A war that has not been won in half a century is a war lost. It was proposed that the exclusively punitive approach be replaced by a focus on human rights, public health, more education and prevention, while continuing to fight the mafias that control the business. It makes no sense that there are more prisoners in the United States for drug-related crimes than the entire prison population of Europe. We raised this issue with President Obama at the 2012 Summit of the Americas in Cartagena. He was very receptive, and this allowed us to initiate efforts in several fronts. An initiative was carried out in Panama, led by Adam Kahani, the Canadian expert in conflict resolution, who applied his method of transformative scenario planning and analyzed, without prejudice or dogma, the various possible scenarios depending on which path was taken in the global fight against illicit drugs. This in turn led the OAS at its General Assembly held in Guatemala in 2013 to call on the world to discuss this issue with these new approaches. And in that direction, at the request of Colombia and other states, a special session of the United Nations General Assembly was convened in 2016 to discuss the drug issue. Unfortunately, Due to the opposition of several countries, especially from Asia and the Middle East, not much progress was made. It is a UN task that is still pending, but UNGAS 2016 is a good starting point. When we were in office, we sprayed and eradicated a record number of hectares under coca cultivation, seized a record number of tons of cocaine, and took into custody the largest number of heads of drug trafficking organizations in the history of the country. But despite all this effort, all this progress, we must be realistic in admitting drug trafficking has continued to finance violence in Colombia, enriching the mafias and satisfying the demand of consumers abroad. Sadly, Colombia remains the #1 supplier to world markets. Our struggle can be compared to the effort of riding in a stationary bicycle. No matter how hard we pedal, we remain in the same place. For all these reasons, I went from being a hardliner to a pragmatic realist when it comes to the war on drugs. It is time to acknowledge that prohibition and criminalization put people at greater risk. They deepen stigma and marginalization, especially for those who use drugs or are involved in drug production and trade. The Global Commission calls on local and national governments to adopt drug policies grounded in science, public health, and human rights. To this end, we propose five key pathways. First, putting people's health and safety first. Second, ensuring access to essential medicines and pain relief. Third, ending the criminalization and incarceration of people who use drugs. Four, refocusing enforcement on trafficking and organized crime. And five, regulating drug markets so governments, not criminal groups, exercise control. Decriminalizing drug use and possession is not only the foundation of a humane drug policy, but a proven way to reduce the social and health harms of prohibition. Colombia's own experience, with over 30 years of drug decriminalization, shows how this path can enable meaningful investment in harm reduction and health and human rights-based approaches. Let this final day of HR25 renew our commitment to transform drug policy, locally, nationally, and globally. The relationships built here and the seeds that have been planted will carry, I hope, will carry us forward from neighborhood streets to the highest corridors of power. Together, we can harvest justice. Thank you, and keep going.
Thank you for listening. And we mentioned earlier about how much it's meant to have so many people from our community in solidarity. And as we, just before we started, we were sitting up here and I lost count of how many people came to take photos of our next speaker. So everyone already knows who it is when I say that. So with no further ado, I'll invite Anton up and the rest is yours. So please, over to Anton. Thanks.